Hello, and welcome back to Toxic, the pop culture podcast where we discuss issues in pop culture, but from a moral perspective. It's hosted by two cultural critics and pop culture junkies. My name is Leia, and of course, I'm always with my buddy,
Carolina.
Shalina. Do you know who we're going to talk about today?
I know his name is Young Thug, and I'm assuming he's a rapper, but I don't know who he is. No, I don't know him.
Okay, well that's a good start. And let me know if it's hard to hear me at any point. I am recovering from a cold after some holiday travel, so we are going to hope that my voice holds out to discuss Young Thug, who is a Grammy-winning rapper.
Oh, okay.
Who
So
is
what's he's known? What's his hits?
that is oh man, you asked the one thing I didn't actually look up. He has a lot of hits. He has a lot of songs out, and that's actually kind of central to the case being brought against him. And we'll get into like why we want to talk about him because this isn't necessarily a topic that that would interest us normally, but there's some interesting things going on with this. So speaking of his music, he is, like I said, a Grammy-winning rapper, but he's being painted as the leader of a criminal street gang that has committed a slew of violent crimes in the Atlanta area over the past decade. So
Oh,
yes, it's pretty serious right now. He some publications said 56, but the others said 65. So that number is the count of indictments face that he and his fellow well, some would say music label mates, but the DA's office would say his fellow gang members. So there's a 65 count indictment, 28 people with crimes such as murder, attempted murder, armed
whoa.
robbery, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, theft, drug dealing, carjacking, racketeering, and witness intimidation. In fact, uh, Young Thug himself, whose real name is Jeffery Williams, is facing 20 years in jail convicted because he is being prosecuted under the same racketeering law being used against Donald Trump right now. They're actually Rico charges that they're facing, which is pretty serious.
That's what they got the
So
mafia,
yeah,
or they created
yeah, pretty
that
much.
for the mafia back in like the 50s, I think. Maybe.
Okay, well that's an
Maybe
interesting
the
history.
60s. Yeah.
Um, I didn't realize it was that old. Because you hear about it a lot these days. I didn't realize it was that old. So yeah, the indictment claims that his record label, which is known as Young Stoner Life, which is an interesting point we'll come back to, that it's not just a record label, but it's a gang called Young Slime Life. So I guess one's a gang, one is a label, but they're really one and the same.
Oh boy.
And it's been operating since 2012. It has an affiliation with the National Bloods. Can you imagine? So that's where we are, and the reason that it's they've been charged the way they've been charged is because it's all interconnected, according to the DA, right? So the music interconnects with the crime. So um, this Young Thug, Mr. Thug, they say that he accumulated drugs, cars, guns as his followers competed to win favor by murdering, stealing, and hijacking in a decade-long spree. What's super interesting is that, according to the DA, some of the lyrics in some of his songs coincide with things that were happening IRL, right? So according to the DA, he's singing about the things he's doing, these crimes, uh,
Oh
and
geez.
so it's pretty right. It's pretty wild. So yeah,
This
any
is very
thoughts? Anything you want to
interesting.
say?
Well,
Right, it
no,
is pretty
so
interesting.
my first thought is this is irony because some of the criticism of some of the modern day rappers with their thug life rapping is kind of like they're not even living that life. Like kind of like someone like Drake. It's
Yeah,
like, okay, Drake, like
they're
you're not a
posers.
thug. Yeah, they're complete and utter
Yeah,
posers in every way.
that's a good
Um,
point.
but it sounds like in this situation,
He's the real deal, trying to pretend he's a poser. Yes, that's exactly.
oh
That's such a good
God.
wrap up of it. You mentioned like Drake and the posing and things, and so they've been trying to pass something. When I say they, I guess some people would say House Democrats, but well, yeah, I guess that's who's actually who's sort of pushing this through. It's a bill that's been introduced a couple times and it's never made any sort of traction. But I believe it was reintroduced this past April, so April of 2003. Sorry, 2023, and it was a bill that would make it illegal for prosecutors. This is what I want to talk about, which is why I think it's sort of relevant to the things that we talk about, kind of in our wheelhouse. And this is to me where the question, where the moral question comes in, right? Because like racketeering, carjacking, murder, I think we would both say that's pretty toxic. But this is where there might be a bit of a question. So the bill would make it illegal for prosecutors to use violent lyrics by rap artists against them in court if they commit crimes, fighting First Amendment protection, saying that this is free speech. You've got a lot of big name rappers pushing for this to happen. I know Jay-Z and Jay-Z is probably the biggest of the names, but a lot of Meek Mill, I think, has spoke out in support. Killer Mike, a bunch of big name rappers really want this to happen. And I know personally, I do not want this to happen. I think if someone wants to rap about this lifestyle and then they, are accused of committing acts in this lifestyle, that should be fair game. And I think it's actually pretty dangerous to try to separate art completely from action, especially when, in this circumstance, it seems to be a lifestyle thing for a lot of these rappers. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this free speech thing very much annoys me. And I don't know about this case, and I don't know what their argument is, but I think people are always getting very confused about what the Constitution is actually saying and what it's promising us. Free speech does not mean free from consequences. It doesn't mean you have free access to every platform. It doesn't, I mean, it just means you can't go to jail for something that you said or for criticizing the government or things like that. But that doesn't mean things you say aren't admissible in court. Like, what in the world?
Right? That it's really,
Like,
I think, yeah. Go
it's
ahead.
just, I mean, it's like, okay, if
Go
I'm
on.
like, I'm gonna murder someone, I can say I'm gonna murder someone. I can say whatever I want. You can't throw me in the clink for saying things, but you
Right.
should be able to be able to, if then someone's murdered and someone who I said I was gonna murder and it pops up, it's like, no, they should be allowed to put that into the evidence. Sorry, you know what? My
Agreed.
brain is fried. I'm not making a coherent argument, but I
No,
think
that
people understand what I'm trying to say. What I'm
I think you,
saying
yeah,
is
yeah,
that,
go ahead.
yes, I don't understand how they're going to argue against using it as it's a free speech thing. No one is saying you can't freely rap what you want and you can't say what you want.
Well, what they're saying is that these are stories they're telling, and they're not free to tell the other made up stories. And that, it's funny. It's called the Restoring Artistic Protection, or RAP
Oh,
Act. And so
it's,
yeah, it's to protect artists from the use of their lyrics against them in criminal and civil proceedings. And yeah, so we're in agreement that it's not a great idea to take that away from people. So we'll see what happens. It made more headway than it ever has this past April. So I don't know exactly where it is. It's still in limbo. It's still being decided if it's going to be decided, right? Or if they're just going to throw it out again. But this is the furthest it's made it. And I believe some portion of it did pass, but maybe it was just in one state. I don't remember exactly. But basically, if this is something that interests you, keep it on your radar, because I don't think this is a great idea. So that's, yeah, unless you have anything else to say, I wanted to just quickly go over some of the other reasons, because when we pitched this idea of talking about Young Thug, I asked what you knew, and you said you just noticed that he was in that the name just was coming up, right, in this trial. And
mm-hmm.
so two of the kind of silly reasons that it has been, well, I will say that there's been the trial has been plagued with a lot of delays, many delays, including finding jurors. I think they went through like 600,
Oh my gosh.
one report said, and things happening with jurors, and a little bit of alleged witness tampering, and some intimidation. Young Thug and another rapper named Gunna are the two biggest names in this trial at the moment, right? And Gunna and a couple of other rappers have actually already sort of taken a deal. They've already sort of pled to some of these things, and some of them, there's a range of like Gunna himself got a year of prison time, but he already done a year, so they let him go. Yeah, they've said time served was enough. And so some of the other reasons that this has been in the public eye so much is it's been a long time, right? So they've been trying to working up to having this trial for a long time now. And also recently it was shown that Young Thug, it looks like he's put on a considerable amount of weight, especially in the stomach area. And so there are a lot of jokes going on social media about like, what are they feeding him? What sort of prison is he in? Because he was actually denied bond at all due
Oh,
to
he's in
being
prison?
he's, I don't know if prison or jail, but yes, he's not free. He is not free because they say that he's a danger. He's a danger to his community and to the witnesses. So this, it's really serious. So then the other kind of what thing that's a little bit silly that this keeps making the news for is this past week. Oh boy, Young Thug's lawyer, he released a doozy. He claims that not only should they not hold him to his lyrics of of violence and drug dealing, and in relation to his violence and drug dealing allegedly, but his name Young Thug doesn't mean thug. He says, I mean,
I saw that.
do you remember what he said it meant? Can you please?
Truly humble under God.
My God. So
And he said
yeah,
this with a straight face.
and he said this, and not just a straight face, but like I couldn't watch because I get secondhand cringe pretty bad. But I did. I tried to watch in a very dramatic, very impassioned sort of
Oh
explanation.
my
It's
God.
very, very, very embarrassing. And I would point out that the record label itself it's called Young Stoner Life, right? So what are you going to say that's an acronym for? And not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but like, how far are we going to take this, pretending that one thing is another thing? Or remember I said that it's Young Stoner Life, but then the crime part of it may be called Young Slime Life, and that's it's a gang term at this point. So it's
Oh, it
apparently a
is?
word that another rapper sort of came up with it maybe 20 years ago or so, to use as I think it was Nori, I hate pronouncing some of these names, to use as a substitute for the N-word, which is kind of, and I do remember hearing that in some songs, and I assumed it was California slang because I think I was a California rapper at the time. But since then, I guess he said that the word has been misappropriated, and so now it's actually associated with gang things, which is interesting because it's also used as like a way of like relationship. It's also a relationship word, so it's kind of tricky. But my point is, what are they going to say? Is that really means? Like it's pretty obvious to me, not fair, right? And this is why I guess I'm not a juror. That walks like a duck, talks like a duck. To me, it's one of those situations. So that is why he was especially in the news this week, was that acronym claim, and then also apparently an aggressive weight gain. So anyway, that's the story
An
of Young Thug.
aggressive
What
what?
do you think? Weight gain.
Oh, an aggressive. Okay.
Aggressive
I
and
think this
stranger
is
things. Yeah.
ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. I think they are free to rap about anything they want to rap about. Their free speech has not been curtailed in any way and shouldn't be. But what I would recommend is if you're gonna rap about slinging dope and murdering and things like that, you don't actually do it. To me, that's the
Or
problem.
vice versa, right? Yeah.
You said or vice versa.
Right. If you're gonna look, I'm not saying you should, but if you're gonna insist on doing the carjacking and the drug dealing and the murder and so on and so forth, then maybe don't rap about it. You know what I mean? Like,
You know
it's
what?
one or the
That's
other.
such a
Either
good
like,
point.
yeah,
Like, why are you trying to have it both
yeah.
ways? Like, are you a rapper or are you a gangbanger? You can't be both. This is
But it really
stupidity.
says something that's the culture, right? That's something to be glorified, and that would help you sell albums. And it really says something about the people who
Buy it and
promote
promote
these
it
things.
and produce
Not
it.
just by it, but like, yeah, whoever would put it out, that you've got literal criminals talking about trap house. And look, and we all like to drive around to trap, let's be honest. It's really catchy. But there is something kind of gross
Speak for
and sick about
yourself.
it. So
I do not listen to trap house music.
you love T.I. as please, and he's considered like one of the grandfathers. So you're not getting away with any of that. Don't try and young thug me, okay? Like I'm onto this. Anyway, that is what that's at least what
Grandfathered in. I don't like these new thugs. Okay,
Oh,
I like my gangster rap old school and like
you like your
actual.
grandpa thugs. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So noted. You like Shalina likes grandpa thugs. Those are okay with her. Actual thugs, not so much. So
I mean, I think Master P was maybe possibly not opposed. I think he had to do what he had to do before he became, but then he left that life behind. Like that's the other thing. You know what? This is my issue with all of this. I will say, and then we'll leave it at this. Some of the reasons why people or humans in general glorify illegal activities is because oftentimes that's the only way a marginalized community has to get anything, right? Like
sure.
most every immigrant population came here and did what they needed to do. Whether starting with the Jews when they were locked out of everything, they were doing some, mafia-esque type stuff. Then the Irish came, they definitely were like basically a gang. Then the Italians came, they were locked out of everything. They couldn't get jobs. They had the mafia. All of them did it. Everybody does it. You can't get jobs. They won't let you in. They treat you terribly. You have to do what you need to do. But then with all of these white populations, society lets them move on. You know what I mean? They're not still doing this 3 and 4. They send their kids to college. They move out to the suburbs. They do whatever. And then slowly by the 4th or 5th generation, it's cleaned up. Now, it is true that American society really doesn't let Black people do that in a lot of ways, but also when you have an opportunity to maybe move away from it because you're an artist, then you need to move away. Why are you still gangbanging? What is wrong with you?
Because you don't have the street cred anymore, and they really take that seriously. Like really, there's countless rappers that have died over really silly things, like people jacking them for chains, and like people they know. Nipsey Hussle, unfortunately snuffed out by someone in his own, not his camp exactly, but someone he knows, someone he's taking pictures with. So yeah, I think it's just, it makes them seem legit. It's really unfortunate.
Well, if you want to legitimately be a gangbanger, then you're legitimately might have your ass thrown in the clink. Like, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, toxic. All of it toxic. And trying to pass some law to protect toxic lyrics so that when you then do toxic deeds, that it's not able to be entered as evidence is toxic. And I don't know who is sponsoring these bills or whatever, but we need to look at them real side-eye too. And if you're saying the Democrats are kind of on board with this, yuck.
Yeah, not my favorite piece of this. It was kind of disgusting to see that. Yeah, it was sort of legislators that were helping to push this through. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, the trial continues. They are facing a lot of time for a lot of charges, and we'll see if anything happens.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll see what happens to young, truly humble under God, and if
That's
he
right.
gets so humble that he finds his butt in the clink.
And it could be for life. So we'll see.
Well, if you murder someone and it's not self-defense, then you probably need to be in prison for life, don't you?
Well, I'm glad that he's, enjoying the food apparently. So at least there's that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any thoughts, please, we would love to hear them. Leave them under the comments. We want to hear what you think about. Should they be up on Rico charges? Does that feel like overkill? Do you think it's toxic to rap about stuff? Are these just stories? Is it unfair to